Hello everyone, this is Leon. In this video, I will show you how to make Frieren star from Soulstone Frieren. I've left the template link down in the description below, be sure to check it out. First, let's print out the templates on the paper. After that, cut along the dash line and tap them together. Next, this is my personal preference, I will always stick the templates onto a harder cardstock. After that, cut all the templates out. Next, I mark this part here before removing it. This may be used for the reference afterwards. After that, I carefully remove this piping part and leave the circle. Now back to the big moon shape part. I first trace them onto 1 cm foam, and as you can see here, they are the full piece of moon and also one with the missing end. It was supposed to be the middle piece, but I ended up not using it. After that, using a sharp razor blade, carefully cut them out. Now because this is a thick foam, so it is not easy to cut, and we need to stack a few pieces together, so it is really important to get the cut as straight as possible. And the trick is nothing more but maintain a hand angle and cut slowly. After getting all the pieces out, by using a contact adhesive, first stick 2 pieces of the big moon together and make 2 of them. To use a contact adhesive, you have to apply it on both sides of the parts and then leave it for a few minutes and wait for it to dry. And please be minded that inhaling contact adhesive is not good for your health, so please do it in a ventilated area or use a respirator. Once it is dry, carefully stick the foam together and apply even pressure on it so it will stick on nicely. After that, I do a marking line here, and this will be used for the sending reference line, because according to the anime, this is how the stuff looks like from the top view. Then I transfer the marking line onto the foam by marking the side first. Connect the line with a ruler, and then mark the sending side so I would not get confused. Next, to make this step easier, I use a belt sander to do the sanding, because it can remove the material much more evenly. If you do not own one, you can use the rotary tool to remove most of the material first, and then use a sandpaper on the block to sand it down to a smoother surface. After nearly an hour of sanding, this is how it looks like. My target here is to remove roughly 1 cm at the tip and then goes toward the marking line. Now I try to stack all the foam and I realize that 5 cm is a little bit thick for my liking, but 4 cm feels just right. After a few considerations, I decided to eat away this middle piece and go with the 4 cm thickness, but that will also means I have to do some surgeries and open up the holes to insert support structure. To do this, it is very simple. First, make shallow cuts at the cutting line, then at roughly 5 mm depth, cut from the side just like this. Remember, this has to be on the center side so the smoother side will be the surface. Repeat this on the other piece and then stick them together with contact adhesive. Next, proceed to the circle. I first separate this circle out, trace 2 copies of the outer circle on 1 cm foam and then cut them out. After that, I printed another circle template and only cut this part out. Then trace this on 1 cm foam and cut them out. Now just use contact adhesive and sandwich them to the ring. Next, proceed to the inner structure. I'm using a 1 cm aluminum tube and cut them into this length, 10.5 cm and 36.5 cm. After that, slot into the stuff and mark the center here. Then either using a drill or a rotary tool to drill a hole, and it will be used for inserting the wire. Now leave this aside and then bring this to sand with rotary tool. I use 80 grit sanding drum to remove most of the material first, and then switch to 240 grit sanding drum to do final sanding. After that, I use the 80 grit sandpaper to smoothen the foam surface even further, because final sandpaper doesn't work well. After sanding, it will look like this. Now is the LED magic. I'm using this 1 watt super bright red LED. This LED is rated about 2.6 volt and can be powered with direct current. At first I was trying to make this into a series circuit, so it will take around 5 volt to light up, which is the usual voltage for a normal power bank. I soldered the LED to a wire cable and slot the wire into the aluminum tube. And this is the power source I'm using. I bought this from Shopee at a very cheap price, and it takes only 1 lithium-ion battery, and it can fit inside the props as a hidden power source, and the best part is it is rechargeable. So if the power runs out, you will only need a micro USB cable to recharge it. At first I tried to use USB cable to test out the power bank, but as soon as I plugged in, it doesn't power up. It could be due to the voltage drop because of the cheap power bank, so I decided to change the LED into a parallel circuit. After plugging in the power bank, and voila, it works. I use a hot glue to seal the exposing wire to avoid short circuit. After that, I make a cut at the side here to push the LED to the other side. Next, I mix up the AB steel epoxy to stick the aluminum tube in place. After that, I also use a hot glue for further enhancement. Now let's install the switch. I use this kind of push button switch and a 37cm 1-inch aluminum tube as the stuff handle. Next, I use a marker pen to mark the position of the switch and then use a rotary tool to drill a hole. But I failed the first one, so I quickly make another one even though I did scratch a little bit. But at least it worked. After that, with the help of this little helping hand, I connect the switch to the wire. I also use a heat shrink tube to avoid the metal touching the aluminum and might create short circuit. Another test here with the power bank and it's still working so far. Great! Next, using the epoxy again, I first attach this 6mm foam onto the smaller aluminum. After it is dry, I then use epoxy again to stick the bigger tube. And also the switch. Now back to this circle again. I cut 2 pieces of this inner circle with 2mm foam and then I also open up a small hole at the middle for the LED to pass through. Next, stick this on with contact adhesive and also slot in the LED. After that, just put a tiny bit of super glue at the wire and stick it to the foam. And then here's another test and it still works. Now let's proceed to the con part. I did outward slanted cut at the top part because I will be adding skewer inside. Now slot in the skewer and shorten the other end. After that, just seal the tip with super glue. Then poke a hole on the top of the stuff and slot the skewer in. This will greatly enhance the durability of the tip. Next, I use this 1cm half dowel foam and wrap around the tip to get the exact measurement. Then cut it off with a knife. Make a loop and glue it, then attach it to the cone. Next, I proceed to this part below the staff head. I first make one with this template and try to fit it onto the staff. But I didn't like it, so I did a little bit of modifications here. And this is how it looks like. After that, just attach it onto the staff. Next, I use the 1cm half dowel foam again, then stick onto the staff. Now let's do the attachment part. I'm using a 1-inch or 2.5cm PVC pipe and a pipe cutter to make a cut in the middle like this. Then I make another cut like this at one end to avoid the switch. And finally use epoxy glue to stick this in place. After that, to prevent the power bank fall to the end of the aluminum tube, I take a 1cm foam and use the aluminum tube to make a mark. Then I cut the circle slightly bigger and slot it into the aluminum tube. I also use smaller pipe to measure the depth and push the foam into the aluminum tube. Till this part, if you like my video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe my channel and share it with your friends. Next, I proceed to the handle tip. I use a 4mm hard EVA foam for the cone. And also did slanted cut inwards at a bigger curve here, and also slanted cut outwards at a smaller curve. After that, I cut this circle on 1cm foam and use a 1cm aluminum tube to slightly poke into the middle. Next, use epoxy to stick the aluminum tube to the circle, then also attach the cone to it. And it should look like this. After that, add few pieces of foam to the aluminum to insert this part to the handle. Then also add the half dowel ring onto it. And also don't forget to bring these to sand and round off the edges. Then after that will be this last half dowel ring here. Now that the build is finally done, I first use heat gun to heat seal the foam. This will help with closing all the tiny pores on the foam surface and will improve the priming process much more. After that, I bring this to prime. I use spray gun to spray water-based pen, but you can use PVA glue or white glue. Priming the foam is very important because it will seal the pores and forms an even layer on the foam to let the pens to sit on. After priming it, I also first painted the gold. I use silver layer as base and painted the gold on top. After that, I remove this mask and mask over the gold part. And now it is ready to bring over to paint the metallic ray. At the same time, the 20cm acrylic dome I ordered online just arrived. I quickly used the template to place on top of it and use masking tape to tape it in place. Then I also use marker pen to mark the position. I repeat this on the other side because one big dome can make two small domes. After that, with the Dremel and a fiberglass plate, I cut this dome out, sanded and cleaned on the sandpaper. And I must say using fiberglass plate is very dangerous, so please use it with care. Now the stuff is painted. Remove all the masks, and as I do another LED test, I realized a voltage drop as I turn it on. So I decided to do a modification on this thing. As you can see, the power is delivered from the USB port here, but I wanted the power to bypass the USB port and goes directly to the battery. And also my solution is using this clip. I first drilled 2 holes at the side, but I quickly realized it won't work. So I make a cut below the USB port. And it fits nicely. Now solder the wire to the correct holes and then do a quick test. And voila, it works. Now the rest will just solder the rest of the wire. Next, I painted the acrylic dome with clear red and did another light test. Once I make sure everything is good, I use this clear epoxy glue to stick the dome to the stuff. All you need to do is to pump the epoxy equally and mix it, and apply to the dome edge carefully, then place it onto the stuff. After sticking on the other side and it is done. Last but not least, I use a 1.2 meter long red fabric and cut a roughly 4 cm straps. Then I use a lighter to seal the edge. At the one end, I fold the fabric in half and cut a pointy tip, and once again seal it with lighter. As for the accessories, I bought these from the store and seal them onto the tip. Lastly, I use double-sided tape to stick the fabric onto the stuff. Then I wrap this around, and towards the end, also use double-sided tape to fix this in place. After that, I realized a slight problem, that is, when I turn on the LED, it will slowly reduce the brightness due to high voltage and overheating. So I ended up adding an 18 ohm resistor to the circuit. It happens because the LED will only take 2.6 volts, but the battery is actually 3.7 volts. So in order to reduce the voltage output, based on the calculation, it's supposed to be 20 ohm resistor. But the store I went only has 18 ohm. And the reason why I'm still sticking to this power bank is still because it has the ability to recharge when you are out of juice.